My daughter pushed me into the lake and laughed. "Don't be so dramatic," while I was struggling to stay afloat. So I quietly got up and decided to return to them the most unthinkable thing. Before I dive into the full story, leave a comment below. Who knows, maybe my story was once someone else's out there too. It was supposed to be a nice Sunday afternoon. We always did that, family cookouts in the backyard, right by the pool. It's been a tradition in my family ever since my late husband built that deck with his bare hands. God, that must have been nearly 30 years ago now. The smell of ribs sizzling on the grill, the faint clink of wine glasses, and the sound of the kids splashing around in the shallow end. It was the kind of chaos I used to treasure. That day, the sun was out, high and hard. The air was thick with humidity, but sweet with hickory smoke. I wore my old navy blue sundress, the one with tiny white flowers on it. I always liked how it made me feel a little lighter, a little younger. My back hurt, but that was nothing new. I leaned on the railing of the wooden deck, staring at the still surface of the water. It was quiet, almost too quiet for a family gathering. Lenora, my daughter, stood behind me. She's 29 now, grown, sharp-tongued, beautiful, but not the soft kind of beauty. Hers is carved out of bitterness and resentment. I used to hold her when she cried over scraped knees. Now, her voice cuts colder than any winter wind I've known. She came up behind me. "Still think you can swim, Ma?" Her voice had this edge, half teasing, half something else. I turned halfway, my hand still gripping the railing. Before I could say anything, before I even saw it coming, her hands shoved me square in the back. Not hard, not violent, but steady, deliberate. I slipped. The wood was slick with condensation from the ice bucket. My feet gave out, and I plunged headfirst into the water. The shock of it ripped the breath out of me. It wasn't just the cold. It was the betrayal. My lungs panicked before my mind did. Underwater, time slowed. I saw the filtered blur of faces. Above me, standing at the edge, my heart pounded against my ribs like a warning bell. I kicked and clawed, surfaced gasping, hair plastered to my cheeks, dress floating around me like seaweed. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not the warm, silly kind that makes your chest glow. No, this was sharp, cutting, laughter made of glass and vinegar. Clint, my son-in-law, chuckled first. One of Lenora's friends, that redhead boy she works with, whistled and clapped. Lenora, she just smirked, looking down at me like I was a bad joke in a sitcom she didn't even like. No one offered me a towel. No one helped me out. The water clung to me like shame. I gripped the metal ladder, pulling myself up, every movement stinging with the reality that I had become invisible, unwelcome. I sat at the edge of the pool, dripping wet, heart hammering. Nobody spoke to me. They just went back to their ribs and wine and conversation, like I hadn't been pushed, like I hadn't almost drowned. It wasn't just water I was swimming in. It was the thick silence of being forgotten. And I tell you, there's no feeling lonelier than realizing your family doesn't see you anymore. Not really. Not as a mother. Not as a person. Maybe not even as a presence. I used to be the glue that held everyone together. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas trees, homework projects at midnight. I was the one who stayed up when they were sick. I was the one who made sure they were clean clothes, full bellies, and bedtime stories. And now, I'm a joke, a punchline. Some washed-up old woman who can't even stand on a slippery deck without making a scene. But let me tell you something else, too. That push, it woke me up. Not all at once. At first, I cried quietly in my room, wrapped in an old quilt my mother stitched by hand. I stared at the ceiling for hours that night, not sleeping, just thinking about who I used to be, about who I let myself become. Lenora didn't knock on my door. Clint didn't say a word. Nobody even asked if I was all right. And that's when I realized something brutal and clear. I raised them to be strong, independent, capable, but I never taught them how to be kind. I thought love would be enough, but love without respect, without empathy, that's just decoration. That's the bow on a box of nothing. The next morning, I stood in the mirror, looking at the woman staring back. Her hair was thinner, her eyes tired. But behind that, there was steel. Buried deep, but it was there, and I knew right then I wasn't done yet. That push didn't break me, it woke me, and something was about to change. This family may have forgotten who I am, but I haven't. Not anymore. I squished down the hallway, sandals squeaking, sundress sticking to my skin like a wet rag. Chlorine and damp cedar clung to me, but I was too shaken to peel the fabric away. All I wanted was a towel, a look, a single word that said, "Mom, are you okay?" Anything to prove I still mattered in the house, my paycheck bought and my hands once clean. The kitchen lights blazed bright as noon. Lenora's Bluetooth speaker hummed with soft rock favorites from her high school days, the ones I used to blast while carpooling her to band practice. Now that music felt like it belonged to a stranger. Clint had the laptop open on the island, clicking through a slideshow of a whitewashed Airbnb in Santa Paloma. Arched windows, infinity pool, palm trees bending like they were posing for Instagram, 7 bedrooms, walkout beach access. He bragged, swirling the iced tea I brewed this morning. Cheaper if we split it 6 ways. 6, not 7. He'd already counted me out. Lenora leaned over his shoulder, sun-streaked hair falling forward. She tapped the touchpad. Zoom in on the balcony. Her laugh tinkled, light and carefree, as if half an hour ago she hadn't pushed her own mother into chlorinated silence. I hovered at the doorway, dripping onto the hardwood. No one paused the slideshow. No one smelled the pool, water drying sour on my skin. So I walked in, sat at the very last chair, the spare, the one nobody ever scoots back in because it doesn't fit the aesthetic. My dress left a dark crescent on the cushion. I folded my hands, knuckles white, heart slamming so loud I wondered if the ceiling fan could hear it. They kept talking. Flight times, rental SUVs, whether Santa Paloma tacos were gluten-free. Every sentence sailed over my head. Blades that shaved another sliver off my presence. I watched ice bob in their glasses, heard crackers snap between perfect teeth. My stomach clenched from the chill still wrapped around my ribs. Across the table, a framed family photo smiled back at me. 4th of July, 5 years ago. Lenora perched on my hip, sparklers twinkling. Clint crouched beside us. I remembered the smell of fireworks and her sticky lemonade kiss on my cheek. Now that picture felt like a postcard from a country that no longer existed. I cleared my throat. Nothing. Tried again. Louder. Lenora flicked her gaze at me, brief, bored, then turned to Clint. "We should reserve tonight before rates jump." She acted as if my voice were background noise. The refrigerator hum she'd tuned out for years. Something inside me cracked. Quiet but final. I pushed back my chair. The scrape cut through their chatter. "Sounds like a great trip," I said, voice steady even though my insides shook. "Who's watching the house while you're gone?" Clint blinked, confused. We'll figure that out." "I see," I nodded, as if we were polite strangers. I stood, water pooling around my heels. No one offered a towel, not even a dishcloth. I shuffled to the sink, poured myself a glass of tap water. Chlorine on chlorine, how fitting, and took a long swallow. My reflection in the dark window above the basin startled me. Hair plastered, mascara bleeding, lines across my forehead deeper than yesterday. I looked like one of those ghosts in low-budget horror flicks. Half there, half gone. My mother used to say the kitchen was the heart of a home. Standing there invisible, I realized our heart had stopped beating long ago. We'd just been busy to check for a pulse. So I listened. I listened to them laugh about beachfront bonfires and kayaks for sunrise selfies. Each laugh was a tiny eviction notice, telling me to move out of their conversations, their memories, their future. I placed the empty glass in the dishwasher, still a habit, muscle deep, then walked toward the staircase. Nobody asked where I was going. Of course they didn't. Ghosts can drift wherever they like. Living folk don't care. Halfway up, I heard Lenora say, "Mom's acting weird today." Like I was some eccentric neighbor, not the woman who braided her hair for prom. At the landing, I paused by the linen closet, towels stacked in neat rainbows. My system. I grabbed the oldest one, threadbare peach with bleach stains, wrapped it around my shoulders, and kept walking. Each step squelched softly, leaving faint footprints that would dry invisible before nightfall. In my room, I shut the door and leaned against it until the latch clicked. The air smelled of lavender sachets and cedar hangers, safe but small. I peeled off the wet dress, tossed it into the hamper, and tugged on sweatpants and a faded concert tee from '92. The towel lay across the chair like shed skin. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands on knees, breathing. The house echoed, muffled, laughter below, planning, dreaming, excluding. They sounded happy. Strangely, that hurt the most. Their happiness existed perfectly well without me. On the nightstand, my journal waited. floral cover cracked at the spine. I opened to a blank page, water droplets darkening the paper, and wrote, in block letters, "I am not a ghost." The pen dug so hard it almost tore through. Underneath, I listed every invisible task I still did: mortgage autopay, property taxes arranged, birthday cards pre-stamped, the garden mulched, responsibilities no one noticed until they weren't finished. When the list filled half a page, I stopped, stared at it. The ink bled a little where my hair dripped, and I thought, if I disappeared tomorrow, how long until they noticed the garbage didn't roll to the curb, the fridge didn't restuff, the check for the pool maintenance bounced? Days, weeks, an idea kindled, small, steady, not spite, clarity. Maybe letting a few things not get done would remind them who did them in the first place. I closed the journal, slid it under the mattress. From downstairs came a burst of laughter, Lenora's high, carefree. I smiled, but it wasn't warm, more like baring teeth to the dark. Tonight, I decided, I'd cook dinner for myself only, just a grilled cheese and tomato soup. Nothing fancy, nothing shareable. Let them DoorDash whatever Santa Paloma diet required. Tomorrow, when bills arrived, I'd leave them on the counter unopened. See if anyone bothered. Small ripples, I told myself, sink big ships over time. I wrapped the damp towel tighter, thinking how ghosts sometimes move objects to get attention. Maybe I'd start moving a few. Outside my window, cicadas sang their relentless July song. Life droned on whether anyone listened. But for the first time in years, the beat felt like mine to keep or to change. I wasn't leaving this house, not yet. These rooms held too much of my sweat, my labor, my stories. But I was done haunting its corners politely. Downstairs, the slideshow's music faded out, cabinet doors shut, footsteps padded toward the living room. The evening slid into its usual routine: TV, phones, clinks of ice. But something fundamental had shifted. Maybe only I could feel it, but that was enough for now. I lay back, staring at the ceiling fans spinning slow circles. Every rotation whispered the same promise: I am still here, I am still here, I am still here. And the ghosts, well, they'd soon learn the house wasn't big enough for all of us. I shut the bedroom door behind me and turned the lock, even though nobody ever bothers to knock. The old brass bolt slid in with a tired click that sounded too much like resignation. I caught my reflection in the standing mirror, hair matted in stubborn gray knots, knees scraped raw, eyes rimmed with the red left by chlorinated water and fresh betrayal. I could still smell the pool on my skin, sharp and chemical, like a cheap attempt at purification. But the sting in my body was nothing compared to the dull, marrow-deep ache sliding around inside my chest. I kept waiting for anger to roar, to blaze hot and clean, but what came instead was something colder, a slow leak of hope I hadn't realized was still stored away. On top of the dresser sat the thick leather photo album I'd started the week Lenora was born. Yellowed masking tape labels marked the years, 96, 97, and so on, my handwriting shrinking as the pages thickened. I slipped the cover open, to 2003, third grade. There she was, gap-toothed and freckled, standing on our cracked driveway in an oversized backpack. The caption I'd scrawled beneath read, "My fearless explorer." I turned another page. Easter morning, plastic eggs scattered across the crabgrass, jelly bean stains around her lips. Next page, her 9th birthday sleepover. Lenora in cupcake pajamas, frosting on her cheek, arms flung around to giggling friends. I could almost hear their sugar-high squeals bouncing off the basement walls. I kept flipping, my thumbs blurred, heart hitching on every frozen grin that belonged to a girl who once called me her angel with the magic oven. Then I stopped on the glossy shot, taken the day she got that gemstone necklace. It was a small emerald heart and a silver bezel. Nothing fancy, but it cost me half the insurance payout I'd received after my right rotator cuff surgery. One look at her face, those wide, teary eyes, the way she pressed the pendant to her chest, and I'd decided it was worth every penny. "Mom, you're the best ever," she'd screamed, leaping into my good shoulder so hard I almost ripped the stitches. I can still feel that hug, its wild urgency. Back then, she loved without calculation, the way kids love before the world sticks, price tags on every feeling. I traced the photo with 2 fingers, then let my hand drop. Where did that child go? The one who screamed with joy just because I showed up? I leaned against the dresser, album heavy on my lap, and let the timeline roll forward in my head. Middle school sarcasm, high school eye rolls, college phone calls that grew shorter and shorter, until our talks were mostly about bills and logistics. But the real shift, I think, happened 3 years ago when Lenora landed that marketing job to States. She learned how to turn every conversation into a negotiation, numbers, metrics, leverage. Somehow kindness got reclassified as weakness, tenderness as poor branding. I can't blame the company alone. The world itself is louder, sharper. People laugh at compassion like it's a punchline. Lenora only adapted faster than most. But still, there's a difference between toughening your skin and letting your heart ask. I pressed the album shut and slid it back into its dust groove. In the mirror, the woman staring back wasn't just hurt. She looked complicit. I shaped her, I thought, yet never showed her how to soften without shattering. I saw every time I'd surrendered the argument to keep the peace, every "it's fine, honey" that hid the truth of my exhaustion. Every birthday where I played caterer instead of guest so nobody noticed I was alone at my own child's party. I lowered myself to the edge of the bed, elbows on thighs. The joints creaked like settling floorboards. You feared losing her so much you gave her permission to lose you, a quiet voice inside whispered. And that voice, impossible to ignore after the pool, after the kitchen, asked the most brutal question of all. Who exactly have you become while trying not to be a burden? I sat for a long time, listening to the air conditioner kick on, then off, as if it, too, was thinking. Memories kept crawling out of corners. The first time Lenora cursed at me, and I pretended it was teenage hormones. The night she borrowed the car, dented the bumper, and I swallowed my lecture because I couldn't bear her silent treatment. The afternoon, I skipped physical therapy to drive 6 hours and assemble her IKEA shelving because she was too busy to read instructions. Each compromise felt tiny in the moment. Collect them in a pile and they weigh as much as regret. At some point I realized my hands were clenched so tight the scar on my surgery shoulder throbbed. I flexed my fingers, forced them to open. This room felt different, denser, like gravity had inched up a notch. I stood, crossed to the closet, and pulled down the fire-safe lockbox where I keep anything that still holds monetary value. Inside was a small velvet pouch, Lenora's emerald necklace. She'd left it behind last year, said emerald wasn't trending, and asked if I wanted it back. Funny how easily we trade memories for trends. I laid the necklace on the nightstand, stone glinting under the lamp. I had pawned bigger things before, my mother's china set, my husband's watch, to patch cracks in the family budget. But I couldn't pawn this. It meant too much, even tarnished by neglect. I slipped the chain around my neck. The gem rested at the center of my collarbone, a cold, sharp reminder. I studied myself again. Same tangled hair, same bruised knees. But the emerald caught the light and threw it sideways, like a rebellious spark. In that glint I saw a decision forming, slow but solid. The world had taught my daughter cruelty. I could not unteach it in a day. But I could stop rehearsing the role of expendable parent. I could reclaim the space I kept shrinking out of politeness. I could speak full sentences that didn't end in apology. I took out a notepad, yellow legal, edges curled, and began listing boundaries the way doctors list prescriptions. I will not clean up after the cookout tomorrow. I will not loan money for the Santa Paloma trip. I will schedule my own vacation, somewhere quiet, during their beach week. I will see a therapist about this grief that walks around disguised as anger. I will invite friends over for poker night next Friday, even if it clashes with their plans. I paused, then added a sixth. If respect doesn't return to this house, I will leave it. I underlined that twice, the pen cutting so deep it embossed the page below. Outside, a lawnmower droned down the block, its engine steady and indifferent. Normal life kept grinding on, unaware of any revelations happening behind second-floor blinds. That was fine. Not every revolution needed an audience. I placed the list on top of the photo album, past and future stacked together, then drew a long breath. The emerald heart felt warmer now against my skin. Maybe temperature, maybe symbolism. Either way, it steadied me. Downstairs, cabinet doors slammed, Clint rummaging for late-night snacks. Lenora's laugh floated up the stairwell. I used to chase that sound like a pilgrim chasing bells. Tonight it drifted past me like elevator music in a building where I didn't rent a floor. I unlocked the bedroom door, stepped into the hallway, and flicked off the light behind me. Shadows stretched long, but I walked through them tall, one hand brushing the necklace as if to prove solidity. Love, I realized, is only holy when it lives side by side with self-worth, and worth, like any muscle, withers when it goes unused. Mine had been asleep, not dead. I headed for the laundry room to throw my soaked dress in the wash. Tomorrow I'd wake early, brew coffee just for myself, and see how the house sounded when I stopped ghosting my own life. The floorboards sighed beneath my feet, ancient and forgiving. Somewhere inside that sigh, I swear I heard the smallest of applauses, maybe from the woman I used to be, relieved to know she still had some fight left. And for the first time since the push, the ache in my chest loosened just enough to let in a thread of something that felt dangerously close to peace. Morning light leaked through the blinds in thin, golden stripes, landing on the kitchen floor like a faded barcode. The house was finally quiet. Lenora had rushed out before 7, carrying her laptop bag and the sweet toxic perfume of expensive hairspray. Clint followed soon after, still chewing toast, never once meeting my eyes. Their cars coughed down the driveway, and the silence that settled felt too clean, like a hotel room after checkout. At 8 o'clock sharp, 3 crisp knocks rattled the front door. No doorbell, never the doorbell. I wiped muffin crumbs from the counter, tucked a stray gray curl behind my ear, and opened up. There she was, Opal Bennington, 34 years of friendship etched into her crow's feet smile. She balanced 2 travel mugs in a cardboard carrier, and a brown paper bag that smelled of cinnamon and butter. Her lipstick, always the same soft raisin shade, was already smudged from the steam. "Morning, kid," she said, calling me what she's called me since I was 30 and thought 50 was ancient. I stepped aside, and she breezed in, humming a Hank Williams tune off-key. The living room still wore last night's mess, wine glasses, throw pillows on the floor, a half-folded blanket that smelled like sunscreen. Opal's glance landed on the chaos for half a second. She raised an eyebrow but never said a word. That Opal sees everything, judges nothing, unless you hurt someone she loves. She set the carrier on the island, slid a mug toward me. The lid was already loosened because she knows my wrist aches in the morning. 2 pumps maple, 1 pump hazelnut, little splash of oat, she recited. I took the mug, warmth pouring through my fingers, and swallowed a thank you that felt too small. Then I told her, all of it, the shove, the laughter, the way the air tasted, like rust when I couldn't find my name in anyone's mouth. Words spilled faster than I could shape them, but she never flinched. She just listened, one elbow on the counter, the other hand tearing her blueberry muffin into neat halves. When I finished, the kitchen clock clicked from 9:11 to 9:12. Opal exhaled, slow, like cooling soup. "Sugar," she said, and her voice shook. If my Michelle pushed me into a pool, I'd sell her car for scrap before my hair dried. I laughed, a raw, surprised bark, and something tight inside cracked open. Opal wasn't finished. She slapped a sticky notepad onto the counter. "Here's what we're gonna do. Number 1, cancel any automatic transfers to their joint account. They're adults, let them juggle late fees like the rest of us. Number 2, stop stocking their almond milk nonsense. They want fancy milk, they can fancy pay. Number 3, slow down," I said. My pulse was kicking like a bad starter motor. "I'm not sure I'm ready for scorched earth." Opal peeled back the muffin paper. "It's not scorched earth, it's crop rotation. You leave a field fallow so new stuff can grow. Right now, they're strip mining you, honey." The phrase settled over me like cool shade. Still, habit is stubborn. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe Lenora Opal's mug came down with a thud. "Don't you dare shrink what happened. If a stranger pushed you in, would you doubt yourself this way?" "No," I whispered. She softened, reached across, squeezed my scraped knuckles. "You taught that girl to walk. Time she learns to stand." We spent the next hour side by side at my aging Dell laptop. I logged into the credit union portal, cursor hovering over the monthly $500 transfer labeled Lenora Autopay. My stomach flipped the way it did before every mammogram result. Opal said nothing, just rested her hand on the back of my chair. I clicked pause. A tiny green checkmark appeared. Nothing exploded, no sirens, just a quiet confirmation email sliding into the inbox. Next, I drafted a note, short, polite, firm. "Hi Lenora, starting this month I'm discontinuing the auto transfer. Love you, Mom." Opal nudged my elbow. "Delete, love you, not because you don't, but because it turns a boundary into a hug." I stared at the screen, then highlighted the words and pressed backspace. The cursor blinked, naked and certain. I hit send. A lightness fizzed up my spine, half terror, half relief. God, I said, what if she hates me? Opal shrugged. She might. Feelings aren't fatal. She pushed the paper bag toward me. Eat victory carbs. I bit into the muffin. Cinnamon sugar crackled under my teeth, and for the first time in days, food didn't taste like dust. I told Opal about the list I'd written last night, about the threat to leave if respect didn't come back. She nodded as if ticking items off her own internal ledger. Listen, she said, licking crumb from her thumb. Anyone can love what you give them. The trick is finding folks who love what you are. And until Lenora sees you, it's okay to let her miss you. Her words lit a small lamp in my gut. The kitchen looked different, warmer, somehow reclaimed. I noticed the rooster trivet I'd bought at a yard sale, the sun catcher Lenora made in 5th grade, the chip in the countertop shaped like Ohio. These things were mine, anchored to my days, not contingent on anyone's approval. Opal washed our mugs without asking, then dried her hands on the dish towel embroidered with blessed. A gift from Lenora last Christmas, still in its plastic until Opal ripped it open just now. The irony made me snort. Before leaving, she turned. At the doorway, I'll call tonight. Or heck, I'll just swing by with Thai takeout. Unless you finally booked that solo cabin you keep fantasizing about. I rolled my eyes. Baby steps. Opal winked. Baby steps still move you forward. And she was gone. The screen door smacking once, twice, like applause. I stood in the quiet, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rush of blood in my ears. Somewhere outside, a garbage truck groaned, gears grinding. I'd forgotten. It was pickup day. But for once, I didn't sprint to drag bins curbside. Let them sit. The world wouldn't stop spinning. I looked down at my hands, still sore, still mine. On my palm was a smear of blueberry juice, purple and bright. Proof I'd been fed, witnessed, valued. In that moment I understood something simple. Belonging isn't owed by birthright. It's a contract renewed through care. If my own children couldn't sign their names, I'd find people who would, or I'd sign for myself. I took a long breath. The air smelled like fresh coffee and freedom. Then I pulled a blank sticky note from the pad, wrote cabin, August, and stuck it dead center on the fridge, right over the family calendar, blocking Santa Paloma's smug little doodle of a beach umbrella. I smiled. The house felt less like a museum and more like a canvas. And this time, I wasn't afraid to paint over the old strokes. The ghosts could wait outside. I had living to do. I spent the next week becoming someone else, not a better version of myself, an older, brittle, fraying version. I let my hair stay wild, gray strands sticking out like static. I shuffled my feet on purpose, dragging slippers so the fabric hissed across the hardwood. And whenever I poured tea, I pinched the cup just loose enough for a tremor to rattle the china. A spoon clinking against porcelain is the softest alarm bell in the world. Lenora heard it first. She peeked around the doorway, eyes glittering with the thrill of diagnosis. "Mom," she called, sweet as splendor, "you need help with that." I blinked, let my gaze float past her, and murmured, "Tuesday already," even though it was Friday. That afternoon, I took the long way down the stairs, one hand brushing the rail, the other hovering just high enough to pretend I might fall. Clint watched from the bottom step, phone in hand, expression flat as a stopped clock. He was filming. I acted like I didn't see the little red wreck in the corner of his screen. Every night, after I crawled into bed, I opened my notebook, the cheap composition kind with marbled cover, and wrote the day's dialogue like a court reporter. Friday, 2:14 p.m. Clint to Lenora in pantry. If she goes full dementia, we can invoke medical POA. Savings become accessible for her care, plus any leftover. Lenora, it's not like she spends money on herself. This way it still benefits family. Saturday, I forgot to turn off the stove until smoke curled up from an empty skillet. I coughed, wafted it with a dish towel, apologized 3 times to many. Lenora ordered pizza for dinner, and whispered loud enough for me to hear, "She's slipping so fast." I stirred the air with my hand, pretending I couldn't find the ceiling fan switch. Sunday morning, I hid the car keys inside a flour canister, my own little breadcrumb trail. When Clint asked where they were, I frowned at the kitchen table like numbers on a broken calculator. He sighed long and theatrical. "Mom's getting dangerous, Len. What if she drives into a tree?" I wrote that down too. But here's what they didn't know. Before the act started, I'd met with Opal's lawyer cousin, Grace. Grace is a bulldog in kitten heels. She reviewed my accounts, updated my will, filed a revocation of the old medical power of attorney, and set up a springing trust, the kind that locks tight unless I say the password. Literally a password, recorded at the bank with a notary. No diagnosis, no unlock. Grace told me, the best net is the one folks don't know is there. So I played fragile. I let dishes pile until fruit flies held tiny raves in the sink. I sat on the couch and stared at static, humming hymns off key, letting time slow to an echo. Wednesday, after dinner, Clint slipped a brochure onto the coffee table, Winding Oaks, Memory Care, where every moment matters, a stock photo of a silver-haired woman smiling at a sunflower. Lenora cleared her throat, squeezed my knee. Mom, we just want you safe. Maybe you could tour the place, see if you like it. I widened my eyes, let tears pool, but not fall. Is it far? I whispered. Only 20 minutes, she lied. Brochure said for 5. I stroked the sunflower picture as if it were a lost pet and nodded like a good girl. That night, I typed every recorded quote into a cloud doc Grace could access. I saved audio files too. My phone, tucked in an apron pocket, had been busy. Digital breadcrumbs, each one time-stamped. Thursday, I set the stage for my biggest stumble. I stood in the hallway holding a laundry basket, knees unlocked, sandals loose. When Lenora walked by, I let the basket drop, thud, socks spilling like white flags. Then I sagged to the wall and whispered, "Oh dear, what was I doing?" She rushed over, phone, already dialing Clint, triumphant. I stared at my scattered socks and thought of every time I'd paired hers, folded the cuffs just right, left them warm from the dryer on her bed. That evening, while they debated insurance codes in the kitchen, I sat at the top of the stairs and listened. Clint, once she's admitted, house goes on market. Hot neighborhood, should move fast. Lenora, fine, but I want written proof. It's for her expenses. Optics matter. Optics, the word tasted like pennies in my mouth. I pressed record, captured it all. Later, in my room, I lined up the evidence, notebook, audio files, copies of new legal papers. I wasn't sure what climax I was riding toward. Courtroom showdown, tearful repentance, or just me driving away with the trunk full of photo albums. But for the first time in months, the future felt like mine, to sculpt. I knelt by the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, lifted the lid, and found the emerald necklace glimmering atop folded quilts. I fastened it around my neck, watched the stone flash green in the mirror. Let them see whatever weakness they need to see. Under this skin, bone still remembers how to be iron. I snapped the notebook shut, slid it beneath my pillow. Tomorrow, I'd forget the kettle on again, maybe leave the fridge door ajar, each slip a line in their script, each silence a trapdoor. The theater lights were warming, the audience unknowing, and me. I had never been clearer. Lenora called it an intimate dinner, though the guest list ballooned to 12. 3 women from her hot yoga class, 2 of Clint's co-workers, and a couple neighbors who love craft beer enough to show up anywhere it's free. I was told my only job was to bake the lemon pie. Everybody adored these. No need to sit at the table, just make it like only you can. Mom, she left the recipe card on the counter, as if I'd forgotten the last 30 years of sugar and zest. So Friday, right before dusk, I zested 6 lemons, so hard, my hands smelled like furniture polished. I rolled the crust, whipped the meringue, slid the pie into the oven, and watched the top brown through the glass like a time-lapse of my patience crisping. By 7, the living room buzzed with voices. Lululemon leggings squeaked against vinyl dining chairs, and Clint uncorked a second bottle of mid-shelf Chardonnay. I stayed in the kitchen, wiping non-existent crumbs off the island, a ghost in my own home. The sliding pocket door between kitchen and dining room was shut, but not all the way. Conversations leaked through the crack like steam. First came small talk, traffic, interest rates, the new pickleball league. Then Lenora steered the ship. She always does, so she said, voice bright. You know how some people keep backyard koi, while my mom keeps herself in the pool. A ripple of polite confusion. She fell in last week, Lenora explained, raising her glass. Full dress, Sunday shoes, the whole Titanic. Someone gasped. She laughed, the snorty kind she saves for punchlines. She flailed like a drowned raccoon. I'm telling you, I almost called animal control. Laughter erupted, big, generous, hungry. Nobody asked if I was okay. Comedy doesn't pause for context. I braced my palms on the counter. Lemon fragrance mixed with the sharp bite of bleach. Clint must have mopped before company. Good optics. On the other side of the door, a yoga friend. Kude, bless her heart. In the South, that means anything but blessing. Lenora topped it. Honestly, she's becoming a full-time hobby. If we could just relocate her somewhere safe, that'd free up so much mental bandwidth. Another voice, Clint's co-worker, I think, chimed in. My uncles at Winding Oaks. They handle everything. Meals, meds, memory care. Might be perfect. We're looking into it, Lenora said, and I pictured her shining, princess of proactive solutions. Then the sentence that scoured every soft place left in me. Mom's a burden, not family. Silence inside me. Stone silence, no. Shaking hands this time, no sting behind the eyes. An iron calm slid into my bones. You don't mourn what was never yours. You inventory. Then you exit. The oven dinged. I opened the door, heat blooming against my face. The pie smelled like summer carnivals and county fair ribbons, every sweetness I ever tried to give that girl. I set it on the cooling rack, watched the meringue settle. Then I walked to the sink and turned on the garbage disposal. I didn't drop the pie in. Too dramatic, too messy. Instead, I rinsed the mixing bowl, wiped the counter, and slid the pie onto a glass stand. Presentation still mattered. Dignity is a habit, but when Clint poked his head in to fetch dessert, I met his eyes dead steady. Pie's ready, I said. My voice was flat as plate steel. He blinked, maybe noticing the absence of tremor, the absence of sweetie, the absence of me playing housemaid. He carried the pie out like a trophy. Applause followed, forks chimed. I dried my hands, breathing slow. While they devoured my lemon offering, I walked upstairs. Every step felt measured, rehearsed. I pulled a suitcase from the closet, dusty, but serviceable, laid it open on the bed, and began packing with the efficiency of a nurse counting pills. 3 outfits, sturdy shoes, toiletries, the emerald necklace, the notebook of evidence, a worn paperback of Travels with Charlie for long waits. I took the framed 4th of July photo off the dresser, slipped the print out, left the empty frame behind. Some ghosts might like a mirror. Down the hall, voices swelled. Someone asked for seconds. I zipped the suitcase, took one last scan of the room, flicked off the light. At the landing I paused, hand on the banister Lenora once used for toddler gymnastics. I listened. Yoga friend, the lemon is divine. She should open a bakery. Lenora, trust me, the health inspector would shut it down. She can barely operate a stove these days. Laughter, round 2. A bigger crowd can stomach a crueler joke. I walked down quietly. Suitcase, wheels muted on the carpet runner. At the foyer I grabbed the spare car keys. Opal's old Subaru she loaned me whenever you need an escape hatch. I slipped on my denim jacket, checked the inner pocket for Grace's business card, and the cabin reservation printed in neat black ink. I could have burst into that dining room, slammed papers, shouted truths, but rage feeds on attention, and they were full already. So I opened the front door, cool night air flooding my lungs, and stepped outside unnoticed. On the porch I hesitated, not from doubt, but from a sudden wash of memory. Lenora at 6, barefoot, chasing fireflies in this very yard, yelling, "Look, Mommy, I caught light." I let the picture hover, fragile as the insects we cupped in mason jars. Then I set it free. Light belongs to whoever carries it. I walked to the driveway. Moonlight, silvering the pavement. As I stowed the suitcase in the Subaru, muffled laughter leaked from the dining room windows. No bitterness, just noise, like distant TVs in motel hallways. Engine started. I backed out slow, gravel crunching. Halfway down the block I stopped, rolled down the window, and let the night settle on my face. The air smelled of cut grass, and the lemon lingering on my fingertips. I whispered a goodbye no one would hear. I'm nobody's punchline. Then I put the car in drive. Headlights carved a path toward the interstate, toward the cabin by the lake, toward whatever comes next when a woman finally chooses herself. Behind me, the house shrank to a shadow, and the laughter, once a weapon, faded into nothing but wind. I woke before the alarms, 4:30, that ghost hour when even the birds are still thinking about it. The house was dark, hushed the way a theater feels after the curtain drops. Seats empty, dropped programs drifting on the floor. I dressed in the glow of my phone screen, jeans, flannel, the old hiking boots Thaddeus swore would outlive us both. They were stiff at first, then they remembered my feet. I rolled the little suitcase to the door. It held 3 changes of clothes, travel-size soap, the emerald necklace, my notebook of evidence, a Polaroid of toddler Lenora, covered in sprinkler spray, and Thad's blue Oxford shirt that still smelled like cedar. That was it. 45 years of marriage, 31 years of motherhood, boiled down to 27 pounds on cheap plastic wheels. I left the kitchen light off, but I did write a note on the chalkboard by the fridge. Gone with Opal for the weekend. Don't wait up. 7 words felt generous. At 5 sharp, Opal's Subaru idled at the curb, headlights dimmed. I stepped outside. The air was cool, sweet with honeysuckle. No window blinds twitched, no door opened. My leaving made less noise than the cricket chorus under the mailbox. Opal popped the hatch. We didn't hug, no need. She just tapped the dash clock. Train leaves at 6:10. Coffee's in the thermos. I slid into the passenger seat, and we rolled through streets still silvered with dew. Every traffic light flashed yellow, like the town was waving us through. At the station, morning commuters shuffled under fluorescent lamps, clutching paper cups and laptop bags. Nobody saw an old woman with a scratched suitcase. That anonymity felt like a blessing. Opal held out a ticket, one way to Miller's Lake, plus a transfer for the shuttle that loops to the cabin rows. Returns open-ended, she said. Figure you'll know when you're ready. The platform smelled of diesel and powdered sugar from the kiosk donuts. A whistle echoed down the track, hollow and hopeful. As the train eased in, sunrise cracked the horizon, pink and gold leaking into cloud edges. Opal squeezed my elbow. Pretty, isn't it? I nodded, throat thick, but the tears stayed put. Grief had already burned them dry. We found 2 seats facing forward, fabric itchy, but the window view made up for it. Rail lines stretching like pencil marks into the brightening day. I set the suitcase between my boots, one hand on the handle, as if it might jump off at the next bend. Opal unwrapped 2 muffins, passed me the blueberry breakfast of fugitives. The train lurched, then glided. Houses blurred, porches, swing sets, dogwood trees, each one somebody else's story, not mine. I pulled out the Polaroid, little Lenora, gap-toothed, arms wide, to catch more water. The edges were frayed where I'd thumbed them too often. I slid it back, not out of sadness, but out of respect. Some memories are better folded away until they can breathe. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Mom, where are you?" glowed on the screen, followed by "Answer me now" and a string of missed calls. I let them stack up like junk mail. Opal glanced over, eyebrow arched. I flipped the phone face down and took a slow sip of coffee. It tasted strong, unsweet, alive. Past the river bend, the landscape opened. Soybean fields, barns rusted to the color of dried blood, a scarecrow tilting like it had secrets. The rhythm of track joints under the wheels settled into my bones, a steady drumbeat that said, "Forward, forward, forward." Somewhere near Pine Bluff, the conductor punched our tickets. He called me ma'am with the respectful softness Southern men perfect. I'd spent decades answering to Mom, honey, Mrs. Fitch. Ma'am felt formal, adult, maybe even regal, like I'd graduated into my own name again. Opal dozed, chin to chest, a soft snore escaping every few breaths. I opened my notebook, not to add more incriminating quotes, but to start a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, July 1st light, things I owe myself, stillness without guilt, meals that taste like joy, not duty, laughter that doesn't cut, a garden of tomatoes, because Thad loved them, the right to end a story when it turns ugly, even if I'm the only audience member left. The list wasn't long, but it felt roomy. I closed the cover and watched power lines dance along the window edge like musical bars. Sun fully up now, turning, the metal seatbacks warm. When the train slowed for Miller's Lake Station, I felt the first flutter of nerves. The unknown is a wide door, and stepping through takes both feet. Opal stretched, rubbed her neck. "You ready, kid?" Her voice held, a dare and a promise. I stood, knees creaking but steady. "Yeah," I said, surprised by how true it sounded. On the platform, lake air carried a hint of pine and campfire ash. The shuttle driver hefted my suitcase, stowed it in a side hatch, then tipped his cap. Opal climbed aboard to she'd stay the first night, just in case silence felt too loud. As the bus pulled away, the train behind us blew its departure horn, 3 slow notes fading into blue sky. I didn't look back. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is keep their eyes on the road ahead and trust the echo to die on its own. I thought I'd feel hollow, or maybe heroic. Instead, I felt ordinary, like a traveler among travelers. no heavier, no lighter, and that ordinariness was the most radical peace I'd known. I rested my head against the window. Pines zipped by, tall and straight, roots sunk deep but crowns free to sway. I let that lesson settle, stay grounded, bend with the wind, and never apologize for reaching toward open air. Somewhere out there, Lenora might be flipping through empty cupboards, wondering where the almond milk went. Clint might be Googling legal rights, aging parent, left home, or maybe they were still laughing over lemon crumbs. Didn't matter. Their script would go on without me. I'd exited stage left. The shuttle crested a hill, and the lake came into view, water flat as polished slate, morning light skimming its surface, cabins dotted the shoreline, smoke curls already rising from breakfast fires. A new set, a new story. Opal nudged my shoulder. We made it. I smiled back. Yeah, curtain up. The bus hissed to a stop. I stepped onto gravel, suitcase rolling behind, heart lighter than the dawn. Hearth Hollow isn't fancy. It's 4 cabins, a garden shed, and a ragged flag that flaps like an old rooster's comb. But the air smells of turned soil and pine needles instead of chlorine and furniture polish. My room is the size of Lenora's walk-in closet. The walls are raw cedar, the window sash painted moss green, the floor wide planks, scarred by 100 muddy boots. Outside, somebody's wind chime keeps lazy time with the breeze. Opal carried my suitcase in, fussed with the quilt, scratchy but warm, you'll see, then left to help Mrs. Talbot stake tomato vines. I promised I'd join them later. The moment she pulled the door shut, the quiet settled around me like a well-fitted coat. No phones pinging, no cabinet doors slamming, no laughter with a knife hidden in it. I set a folding chair beside the window, where morning sun politely spread itself across the pine desk. From my bag, I took the heavy ivory stationery Grace insisted I buy. Good paper for a good goodbye, she said. I smoothed a sheet flat, uncapped the fountain pen Thaddeus gave me on our 10th anniversary, and began. Lenora Fitch and Clinton Fitch, I'm writing to tell you where things stand, not to beg and not to scold. As of yesterday, my personal savings, checking CDs, and the life insurance balance have been donated to 3 places: the county literacy program, the hospice that carried your father through his last weeks, and the tool library that keeps our town's older folks from paying contractors for every loose hinge. I thought you'd approve of practical charity. If not, that's between you and your pillows. The house on Maple Street is under contract to transfer to Homestart Cooperative, a nonprofit that renovates single-family dwellings into short-term housing for women, leaving domestic violence. Closing date is September 1st. Until then, feel free to gather whatever belongings matter to you. The rest, the rugs, the grill, the clawfoot tub you never liked, goes with the D-Door monthly stipend. Ended the day you laughed about it. Bank already confirmed the stop order. No appeal exists. I have, however, prepaid 2 semesters of your final student loan consolidation. Consider that my last parental bailout and my first act of closing the tab. All legal documents are filed with Grace Bennington-esque. Should you feel the urge to contest any portion, bring strong coffee and stronger evidence. You'll need both. You may call this sudden. I call it overdue. A good mother teaches children to walk. A decent one stops carrying them when they're grown. A foolish one lets herself become a stoop they walk on. I choose to retire from foolishness. I am safe. I am of sound mind. I am choosing peace over proximity. Someday, if your hearts soften, my door, wherever that is, will still open. But only to respect, never again to ridicule. With the honesty you once admired and the distance we all now require. Mabel Alma Larkspur. The pen didn't wobble, though my wrist ached from the long strokes of my full name. I sat back, flexed my fingers, and listened to the wind chime dink against itself. 3 notes. Rest. 3 notes. Like it. 2 was practicing signatures. Only once did the pen hover uncertain. Right after someday, if your hearts soften, I saw a flicker of 9-year-old Lenora in her polka dot pajamas, announcing she'd invent a breath machine so nobody would wheeze the way her granddad did. That girl was ferocious with empathy. Somewhere along the river of time, she must have stepped off the bank and forgotten the map. I pressed the memory flat, the way you iron a wrinkled sleeve. Get the creases out, move on. I folded the letter twice, slid it into the matching envelope, and sealed it with a dab of water from my mug. No return address. They know who I am, or they used to. Outside, Opal yelled heads up, followed by a thud. Probably Mrs. Reich tipping over. I smiled. Life goes on with or without an audience. I walked the path to the Hollow's tiny office, dropped the envelope in the outgoing slot, and felt the oddest lightness in my shoulders, as if each dollar I'd redirected, each memory I'd quit babysitting, had weighed exactly an ounce, and they'd all been clipped loose at once. The mailbox clanged shut. That sound echoed deeper than any applause. Back at the garden, Opal handed me a pair of dirt-stained gloves. "You write it?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't need to read it. Friendship is trusting the letter inside. The envelope. We knelt between tomato rows, tying twine to stakes. The soil was cool and forgiving. Earthworms winked in and out like shy witnesses. I thought of Lenora's childhood, planned to help people breathe easier, and hoped some ember of that compassion still glowed under her grown-up shell. But whether she ever found it wasn't my job to supervise. A seed knows how to crack open. The gardener only gives it room. When the sun climbed higher, I wiped my forehead with my sleeve. A dragonfly hovered over the basil, its wings humming, here, then gone. I breathed in the green scent, long and slow, and realized I was no longer waiting for an answer, an apology, or even a text receipt. Silence could be final, and final could be kind. I eased back on my heels, palms gritty, and looked at the horizon beyond the tree line. It wasn't a future I could predict, but it was wide, and it was mine. And for the first time since the push, the only pulse I heard in my ears was my own, steady, unapologetic, alive. Sunday, just after dawn, I was out by the squash mounds, with a green plastic watering can that sloshed whenever I overswung my hips. Morning smelled like wet straw and peppermint. The sun had only climbed a finger above the pines, but the cicadas were already tuning up. My phone chimed in the back pocket of my jeans, 2 vibrations, the ringtone Opal set for business you'd rather ignore. I finished the row, propped the can against a stump, and thumbed the screen. From Malcolm J. Meriwether-esque. Subject, status update, house and heirs. Mabel, your letter reached Lenora and Clinton last Tuesday. They phoned the bank, to companies, and finally me, insisting you must have been coerced or gone mentally absent. Yesterday, they filed a missing person report with county police. I have confirmed to all parties that you are neither missing nor impaired, merely relocated by choice. Per your instructions, I shared copies of the notarized medical evaluation and the new trust documents. Both appeared. Dismayed is the polite word. I expect further noise but little action. You've outpapered them. Be well. Water your tomatoes, Malcolm. I stared at the phrase outpapered them, and felt a smile tug. Not from spite but from the odd comfort of bureaucracy finally favoring the caretaker. A second ding landed while I was rereading. Voicemail from the county sheriff. "Ma'am, just checking your well-being." I called back, gave my name, date of birth, and the zip code of Hearth Hollow. The deputy sounded relieved, if a little embarrassed to find a missing woman discussing compost ratios. Back at the garden fence, Opal was staking cucumber vines. She raised an eyebrow, and I passed her the phone. She read Malcolm's note, snorted softly. "Let the chickens peck each other. You keep planting." Then she slid the phone into my shirt pocket like a nurse settling a stethoscope and got back to her twine. Late afternoon, while the zucchini bread cooled on the sill, another message pinged. This time from Mrs. Fernandez across the old backyard. "Thought you should know, honey. Lots of shouting next door. Your daughter drove off, crying. Clint kicked the grill hard enough, the lid flew. No judgment. Just updating the neighborhood watch." I typed back, "Thank you, I'm safe," then turned the phone face down beneath the bread rack. I didn't feel triumph. The word that came was buoyant, as if someone had untied a sandbag from my ribcage. Their arguments, their panic, their frantic calls to numbers that no longer dispensed money. Those were simply aftershocks. The main quake had been the moment I folded that ivory paper and sealed the envelope. Around supper, Opal and I joined the other residents at the long picnic table under a string of dollar store lights. We passed bowls, garden salad, skillet corn, the zucchini bread sliced thick. Nobody talked about trusts or missing person reports. They talked about Mrs. Talbot's rogue rabbit, the best route to the farmer's market, and whether the high school marching band still plays Sousa or has gone modern. I found myself laughing, plain, round laughter that didn't cost anyone else their dignity. When the jokes subsided, I looked down the table and realized not one person there knew me as anyone's mother. They knew me only by the name written on the cabin roster, Mabel Alma Larkspur. The full thing, no shorthand, no title. It felt honest, like stepping barefoot onto cool grass after years of indoor carpet. Night settled. Fireflies glowed over the bean, rose, bright, then gone, bright, then gone, the same lesson on repeat. Existence is noticed in flashes. Before bed, I opened my journal and wrote, "Absence isn't punishment, it's a mirror. If they look and see nothing, that's their lesson, not my failure." Seeds sprout in silence. I closed the cover, slipped the emerald necklace off my throat, and hung it on the lamp switch where it caught a sliver of moonlight. In the quiet, I could almost hear the echo of my former life bouncing against the pines, and then thinning, and then fading, until it was no louder than a cricket's sigh. Tomorrow I'll weed the basil, and maybe start sketches for a raised bed plan Mrs. Talbot wants. There will be emails, eventually, maybe apologies, maybe accusations. They'll arrive like junk mail. I'll sort them by weight and worth. For now, the only inbox that matters is the dark sky beyond this cedar roof, steady and unhurried, spelling an old truth in a language of stars. You left so you could live. You live, therefore you are found. It's late afternoon, the hush time when the sun lays itself sideways across the porch boards. I'm parked in the rocker outside my little room at Hearth Hollow, flannel around my shoulders, a mug of Earl Grey cooling against my palms. The garden smells like basil and wet dirt. Sparrows argue over the last of Opal's birdseed, wings flicking, light into the cedar shadows. The mail run came after lunch. Tucked between a seed catalog and a church newsletter was a fat envelope stamped Meriwether and Associates. I knew what it was before I slit it open with my thumbnail. Malcolm's promised report on the final beneficiaries meeting. Fancy phrasing for the moment. My daughter learned there would be no golden goose. I read every line slow, the way you read a script even though you already know who dies in the end. 10:02 a.m., meeting called to order. Malcolm Meriwether, Lenora Fitch, Clinton Fitch present. Conference room B, 10:05 a.m. Estate documents reviewed, house titles signed to Homestart Cooperative, personal savings dispersed to 3 registered charities, remaining physical assets designated for donation or resale at executor's discretion. Las 10:22 alto M. Mrs. Fitch objects on grounds of emotional duress. Mr. Fitch alleges mental incompetence. 10:24 a.m. Executor produces recent medical evaluation declaring client sound of mind. Las 10:27 alto M. Mr. Fitch shouts, verbatim, "She's lost her damn marbles." Executor responds, verbatim, "No sir. She has simply located them." 10:32 a.m. Meeting adjourned. 1 page, black ink, no amendments. I folded the summary into a neat square and slid it under my saucer to catch any drips. The paper felt strangely light for something that once weighed on 3 hearts. Across the rail, Opal kneels among the geranium pots, humming a hymn she only half remembers. She doesn't ask what the letter says. A real friend knows some victories are private refreshments, taken like vitamins and not paraded like medals. I set my mug down, stand slow, and stretch till my spine pops. The world doesn't swirl. It steadies. The tremor I used to fake isn't even a shiver now. Beneath the porch, 2 chipmunks sprint, tails high, busy with secrets that aren't mine to know. Inside, Thaddeus's blue Oxford hangs on a peg next to the door, washed and sun. Every Sunday evening I slide my arms into those sleeves, brew one of his dark roasts, and tell him the week's news tonight. I'll tell him how our daughter learned the cost of laughter that cuts instead of heals. And how, miracle of miracles, it wasn't my job to pay it. I'm not naive. Lenora may write angry letters. Clint may threaten lawsuits between craft beer tastings. Storms could brew, but storms are just weather. A roof and a sense of humor go a long way. I've got both. Tomorrow's list is taped over the light switch, so I'll see it before first coffee. Turn compost pile. Help Mrs. Talbot label seed starts. 3 chapters of Travels with Charlie on the porch swing evening shift. At the literacy van, first student, 8-year-old Milo, wants to read The Mouse and the Motorcycle without stumbling. It's not a grand plan, just a string of small, steady beads. But I've learned a rosary of ordinary moments beats any crown of thorns worn. For show, the breeze picks up. The sparrows lift as one and vanish over the roofline, their chatter trailing behind like kiting. I watch them go, not with envy, not with longing, just recognition. They're built for flight. I'm built for roots and recipes and a story or two. Different gear, same sky. I sit again, sip the tea now lukewarm, and practice saying my name, the way the conductor did that first morning on the train, each word like a stake driven clean into the ground. I am Mabel, I am Alma, I am Larkspur, a woman, a middle name borrowed from a grandmother who survived the Dust Bowl, and a flower that springs bold color from poor soil. That's a whole biography in 9 syllables. Down the path, dinner bells clang, opals signal that Chile is ready. I leave the mug, tuck Malcolm's letter into the pocket of my flannel, and head toward the smell of tomatoes and cumin. The porch boards creak behind me, then settle, holding nothing but sunshine and a single square shadow where I once sat. For years I poured myself into roles, wife, mother, cushion, wallet, until the barrel ran dry. Now there's room for plain air and whatever rain might fall. That emptiness isn't loss, it's capacity. Tonight, I'll eat cornbread with friends who call me by my full name. I'll wash the dishes, hum over the sink, and sleep beneath a tin roof that sings when the wind turns dot. No nightmares of pool water, no echo of cruel laughter, just the hush of crickets and the steady proof of my own breathing. Come morning, I'll lace my boots, tie back my hair, and walk into a day that owes me nothing and yet feels like the clearest credit I've ever had. I don't forgive Lenora and Clint. Not today, maybe not ever. Forgiveness is a garden that grows only if you want the fruit, and right now, I'm not hungry for it. What I am hungry for is ease, soil under my nails, stories read aloud to children who still believe all endings can be good. I reach the doorway of the common kitchen. Opal waves a ladle, steam curling around her grin. Behind her, the pot bubbles low and sure. This is enough, I tell myself. More than enough. And for the first time in decades, that simple sentence rings, true all the way down to the marrow. I step across the threshold. The screen door closes on a soft thump. Outside, the porch stays empty, bathed in gold. The world keeps on spinning, kinder than before, and I am perfectly, fiercely, joyfully present for the ride. My name is Mabel Alma Larkspur. I used to be overlooked in my own home until I decided to leave, not to escape, but to finally live in alignment with my worth. After the difficult journey I've just been through, I've learned one thing. When others no longer value you, be the first to protect your own dignity. I don't need anyone to regret what they did. I only hope they, and you, understand this. The presence of family is a gift, not an obligation. If it were you, in my place, what would you do? Would you stay out of loyalty, or walk away for your own sake? I'd truly love to hear your answer. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters.